Congress officially started its antitrust investigation into big tech companies. Lawmakers held their first hearing Tuesday, focusing on the effect these tech giants are having on journalism. CBS News' Natalie Brand reports from Capitol Hill.
House lawmakers turned their attention to some of the nation's tech giants Tuesday, examining how those companies have changed the news media landscape.
Facebook and Google compete against news publishers for user attention, data, and ad dollars. They are controlling the game and playing it too.
On Monday, the News Media Alliance, which represents around 2,000 news publishers across the country, released a report estimating Google made $4.7 billion from news content in 2018 and didn't pay publishers.
No publisher on its own can stand up to the tech giants. The risk of demotion or exclusion from the platforms is simply too great.
In a statement, Net Choice, an e-commerce trade group representing companies including Google, slammed the hearing, saying in part, rather than trying to protect consumers, politicians are looking to punish online platforms that don't serve their political interests.
The bipartisan investigation by the Judiciary Committee is expected to include a series of hearings to examine whether America's leading tech companies are stifling competition and if existing antitrust laws should be changed.
It is clear that we must do something in the short term to save trustworthy journalism before it's lost forever.
Proposals to break up big companies just because they are big risk throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
On Monday, Reddit co-founder and venture capitalist Alexis Ohanian told CBS News discussions about new technology should have started years ago.
I think we have waited too long to try to really understand a lot of technology that is core to our society.
CBS News has learned the Justice Department and the Federal Trade Commission are in the early stages of launching their own investigations into Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon.
Natalie Brand joins us now from Capitol Hill. Hi, Natalie. So break it down for us, if you will. How are these smaller media companies being hurt by big tech, especially with this growing shift toward digital news?
Well, Tanya, if you think about the way that the majority of Americans are getting their news these days, a lot through Facebook or through Google searches, the publishers are arguing that these small number of tech platforms, the giant tech platforms, exercise a lot of control over the news content and what consumers are seeing, and then also potentially siphoning off ad revenue as well. So that is the danger here that they were arguing during this noteworthy bipartisan hearing on this issue to really dig into the impact of big tech on publishers, large and small.
So does this also impact consumers as well as publishers?
Well, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if these internet searches are providing your news based on an algorithm, then it's some of the tech giants impacting what you're actually seeing online. But then also the argument by the publishers would be that if they are losing revenue to big tech because of the way people are consuming news, then that is forcing newsroom cuts. And the industry is suffering as a result of these changing trends. The argument that you heard from the publishers were that something needs to change because the current practices are not sustainable. So they recognize that this is an important partnership, that these tech platforms serve as an intermediary between the publishers and the audience, but somehow some sort of new relationship needs to be tweaked or formed to make everyone happy at the end of the day.
And Natalie, you mentioned a News Media Alliance study that found Google earned $4.7 billion in revenue last year from, quote, crawling and scraping news publishers' content without paying for any of it. What's hard to understand is why these smaller companies have not been able to band together and push back against big tech to demand better terms for all of them.
And you heard the president of the News Media Alliance there argue that a single platform, or a single publisher rather, can't go up against the platforms on their own. And what he pointed out is that current antitrust laws make it so that the publishers cannot band together collectively. Now, there is bipartisan legislation by two of the key members in today's hearing, Representative Cicilline and also Representative Collins, who would actually amend antitrust law to make it so that some of these news organizations could collectively act to try to negotiate revenue rates with the big tech platforms. We'll see if that proposal goes anywhere. I also want to note that today there has been some criticism of the figure that the News Media Alliance came to in their study, $4.7 billion. But at this point, I mean, a lot is unknown about what is the real impact, and that's why it is important to be studying this right now.
And so what can Congress ultimately do to regulate tech? I mean, this was only the first hearing in what is expected to be a lengthy antitrust investigation. So do we have a sense of what might come next? Is it a real possibility that big tech might get broken up?
Well, that's a big question mark at this point, and I think a lot of people would say let's not put the cart before the horse. The bipartisan lawmakers who are leading this effort really want to hold a series of hearings to investigate what they would call a top-to-bottom review of the tech industry and the current influence on innovators and entrepreneurs, and whether the current antitrust laws need to be amended or whether the current agencies, federal agencies, are enforcing and doing their due diligence in regulating. And as we heard in the piece, there is a separate, what we believe is a separate early stage of an investigation by the DOJ and FTC to also look into some of the big tech companies. CBS News has learned that that could take 2 to 3 years. So what comes from all of this, we don't really know. But at this point, there is a recognition that this does need to be examined, and we do need to look at whether these big tech giants are allowing smaller companies to also grow and innovate as well.
The first step down a potentially very long road. Natalie Brand on Capitol Hill, thank you.